Hello maltsters, whiskey lovers, and everybody who loves the peatiness. Yep, this is the Whiskey Bothy. I'm Ralphie, I'm the host, I review whiskey, etc, etc, etc. Welcome to the channel. This is review number 1105 and it's now mid-November 2025 at the point that this video is going live to the world, and as such you may be thinking that you want to get something a little bit exotic, unusual or special for the end of the year to see in the new year for what we call in Scotland Hogmanay. Well, here's a suggestion, here's an option. It depends on your tastes and it depends on your budget. I'll come to that later. This is Lechaik 10-year-old Hebridean Moon, and it is essentially the cask strength version of this, which is the standard 10-year-old. This is bottled at 46.3% and this is bottled at 58.8%. I was going to say 0.9% there. So there's superficially quite a difference in strength. There's also something, I took that bottle away too soon actually. Have a look at the bottle, Phil. I'll move it around so you can see the whiskey rather than the label. You'll see a distinct difference in colour, and this is because different casks have been used. Both of them matured for 10 years, both of them heavily peated Tobermory. However, there are differences, so do not presume that the Hebridean Moon is simply a stronger version of the standard Lechaik 10. I'll come to that, back to that later. In fact, I'll come back to it in the extras. So let's pour a wee glass and see what we think of it. It is unchill filtered, natural colour, all good. Anything else I'd like to add from the label? Well, I'm just pleased to see that it states in the label round the side that it's an integrity presentation, and this is really quite important, especially in relation to the price, which I'll come back to shortly. What do we have here? I'll tell you what I'm expecting. I'm expecting something incendiary, volcanic, dramatic, very eventful, and extremely peaty. And on the nose, I am not disappointed. This is a peat monster. Lechaik is a peated version of Tobermory Distillery on the island of Mull. And people generally associate Islay as being the home of peaty whisky. However, that is not the case, because right down the west coast, from Orkney through Lewis, yep, from Little Avengerich Distillery, right down to Lag at the bottom of Arran, you will find that the west side of Scotland, Islands, Highlands, West Highlands and Islay, they all produce very convincing, viable, peated signature whiskies, which is caused quite simply by the volume of peat smoke used in the kilning, the drying of the barley prior to it being ground down in a mill and turned into ferment. It's a big peat monster, but do you know what? See in the nose, it's slightly holding back, but I tell you what, see when you arrive in the palate. Oh. It doesn't hold back. It is enormously ashy. Peat, of course, is peated whisky. Very sooty. Highly astringent. Almost vinegary. And I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion. I mean that as a compliment, because what's happening is the weight of the strength of alcohol at 58.8, which isn't far short of actual original New Make Spirit fill strength going into the casks. It's only about 5% less. It's huge. If you are going to have a glass of this neat, you're welcome to your anaesthetic, because by the time you get into your third or fourth sip, your sense of taste is really not going to register anything but a replay of Halloween. It's that much of an event. So we've got to add water to this. Now, I know. There's people who say, no, Ralphie, you don't add water because it spoils what they mean. The master blender put it in that strength, so you've got to drink it that strength. No, and no. The drinker takes responsibility for the event in line with their own palate. So, if someone has paid for that bottle and they want to drink it neat, good luck. But I don't think you're doing your liver any good. And I also think that you won't be tasting anything for a couple of days. This needs water. 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoonfuls, yeah. So a total of 15 millilitres off the soda spoon of water. I'll bring this forward so you can see the volumetry. A beautiful, natural, primarily bourbon influence colour. Bourbon and peated whisky, particularly at a young age, work really well together, because sherry whisky on heavily peated whisky tends to sort of slightly fudge things most of the time, particularly if it's PX or Oloroso sherry. But with bourbon, it's a different event. I'm rolling the whisky around the glass. Huge coat line, huge coating. This is absolutely, emphatically not chill filtered. They're not just saying it. This is a company, a bottler, that really means it. So coming back to the nose again, there's no point in giving you much of a tasting note from concentrated, because the main tasting note is basically around in Muay Thai or kickboxing or MMA, take your pick. That's the effect on the palate. There's not a lot to add to it. Now we've added water, we've slowed things down, we've tamed things significantly. Now we can actually gain access to what's really going on in this bottling. And this is something, if you're a whisky fan, you really want to do, because this bottle costs twice as much as the standard bottle. Twice as much. So what are we actually paying for if we're paying double the money? And I have to quantify what I'm saying here, because the prices I'm quoting you are British prices. Prices shopping online in the UK. So let's put it into perspective. If you're in Canada, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you will be paying significantly more, and I'll tell you why, because you're part of the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth is not about the commonality of wealth. Just so as you know. It's the opposite. So, let's get back to this whisky. Still only just beginning to open up. My goodness, this is reticent. It doesn't really want to say too much about itself. It's in a bad mood, and it really needs to calm down slightly. And to do that, it needs a bit of time. But I assure you, from having had several glasses of this over the last month, it is well worth the engagement and the commitment of time. The nose becomes more white fruit, melon, a little bit of guava. The peaty presence is still powerful, it's still strong. Throughout the event, it always will be. This is a peat monster, simple as that. So when we get to the palate, first taste, once we've reduced the alcoholic strength, big, bold, lemon rind, grapefruit rind and pith, sweet and sour, intense arrival, creamy, delicious, vanilla and infused right down the spine of it, with substantial retreating peatiness. Now, you've got a question now, and I can hear what your question is. Your question is, hey Ralphie, why, when you're adding the water to this, why don't you just have this with a tiny drop of water in it and you'll have exactly the same experience? No, I won't. Different casks, different setup, different composition of the batch and the bottling. And importantly, when you've got an absolute cask strength whisky at 58.8%, when I add that water, it doesn't just suddenly diminish to a lower strength immediately. All the flavour that was caught up, coagulated and congealed into the higher alcoholic strength, it can't just drift off immediately. That takes time. And therefore, having added water, I'm getting this increased volume of flavour of the event, as I would get with this by adding less water. But it's weaker whisky. It's 46.3%. This is 58.8%. And it has been from the moment it was bottled. So you're simply more alcohol, more flavour. That's the golden rule. And you will occasionally see bottles of whisky bottled at 48% for no apparent reason at a good price. And that is always a classic sign that the flavour is underwhelming, and the bottlers, just giving you the knowledge here, the bottlers had no choice but to bottle at a higher strength just to get the event across in the bottle. Why? Because of underactive casks which have taken from the whisky rather than added to the whisky. It happens. And we come to this knowledge through experience. Experience is everything around whisky. Personal experience. Because we're dealing with a personal palate. And whatever anybody else says is our experience that we need to own. We don't taste what other people tell us to taste, we taste what we find. And that takes time. Now we're 10 minutes in, look at that Scotch mist. Isn't that a sight to behold? Doesn't that just warm the threshold of your fire, seeing that mist appear in the glass? Proper. Now the peatiness is coming back again, but it's creamy, grainy, more biscuity. The fruits are in there, but it's restrained in the nose. How is it in the palate? Substantially less shocking and absolutely delicious. There's a beautiful peat-driven umami note of savouriness, almost of chimney smoke, just filling the whole event from arrival to development and into the finish. It's the constant companion of peatiness in what is a relatively delicate and actually quite soft malt. But you won't know this until you buy a bottle of 12-year-old Tobermory and taste it for yourself. It's the way it works. And if you're going to buy a bottle of 12-year-old Tobermory, perfect. You can start blending single malts from one distillery to create unique flavour profiles for yourself that no one else will ever experience, because you've blended it yourself in your whiskey bothy, in your own time, under your own rules. And all you need are whiskey, whether official bottlings or independent bottlings, from the same distillery, peated or unpeated. The thing about Tobermory Distillery is that both their peated and unpeated variants are relatively available and relatively affordable. And certainly the standard 10-year-old Lacheg is being half the price of the Hebridean Moon is more affordable. This is for the real fan. This is for someone that's got at least 10 years whiskey experience. This is for someone who, if it was an independent bottling, it would probably be around about that price anyway, unless Signatory were bottling it, then it would be cheaper. It would be probably nearer that price. But that's the way it goes. We have to retain absolute control over the money we spend and what we decide to buy. Am I glad I bought this? Yes, I bought it. I knew it was expensive, but it is an absolute monster of a peat monster. And as all peat monster lovers will tell you, is that too much time spent in the peat mire, in the peat bog with the whiskey, the palate becomes over-familiar with it. The shock of the peatiness, it wears off. And therefore you need a wee rest, and when you come back to it, this would be a great one to come back to. Pair beautifully with a Caol Ila. Even a Laphroaig, this will hold its own, no problem at all. Final taste before the malt marks. Sweetening up slightly on the arrival. More delicate on the development. Beautiful pickled ginger note in there with the grapefruit, the lime, the lemon, the slight bitterness coming from both the grain and the peat. Peat carries a lot of umami or savoury notes. And see, in combination with a good quality grain, they enhance and they complement one another. And I'm really spotting that here. This is, in its own way, a bit of a banger. But a word of warning, malt mates, it's only a palatable banger if you add a generous amount of water to it and give it time. If you want to be peat shocked, sip it neat. But don't be surprised if you end up with hiccups and a dicky tummy. You have been warned. So let's give this a malt mark, because we're here now. Finished this review. Really enjoying it. Classic whiskey. By the way, this is the sort of whiskey that will really age in the bottle very, very well. What's called old bottle effect. Because I can just tell from the style of it. This the delicate of the fruitiness, yet the intensity of the peatiness. That will round off over time in the bottle, in storage. And if you ever see this in 20 years time in an auction, it's well worth considering to buy. 85 out of 100, quite a generous mark, but I think it's earned it. Does it justify the price? I'll answer that question in my next review, number 1105, Extras, and I hope to see you there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if when you do subscribe, see the little bell icon in the left hand side of the subscribe button. Make sure you press the one at the top so you get all the weekly updates into your feed, because the more you get quality content into your feed, the more you push out the filler.